In the year 1600, India held a massive share of global wealth, driven by a relentless export market for spices, silk, and cotton. Into this thriving economy sailed a small, highly ambitious English trading firm called the East India Company. They arrived with zero political power. Their representatives spent their first years bowing to local rulers, simply begging for permission to set up basic coastal warehouses. Over the next few decades, they worked quietly. They secured a foothold in Surat, then slowly expanded to establish trading hubs in Madras and Bombay. A handful of foreign merchants patiently planted themselves along the coastlines of the richest empire on earth, laying the groundwork to eventually consume the entire subcontinent. The tipping point came in 1707. The death of the powerful Mughal emperor Aurangzeb removed the central authority that had held the vast empire together. As this map illustrates, without a clear successor, the unified empire shattered. Regional powers like the Marathas, Nawabs, and Nizams carved out their own fiercely expanding territories. These newly divided kingdoms immediately turned on each other, draining their military and financial reserves in endless border disputes. The East India Company recognized an opening. They realized they did not need to ship a massive army halfway across the world if they could manipulate the existing fractures between rival kings. India's vulnerabilities were self-inflicted. Internal disunity and localized greed paved the way for foreign conquest. By 1757, the company was ready to escalate from trade to active warfare at the Battle of Plassey. The British faced the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah, whose massive army vastly outnumbered the company's forces. A straight fight would have been a slaughter, so the company bypassed the battlefield entirely. They secretly approached the Nawab's chief commander, Mir Jafar, and promised him the throne in exchange for his loyalty. When the battle commenced, Mir Jafar ordered his massive contingent to stand down. The Nawab was betrayed, and the British secured victory with almost no resistance. Plassey demonstrated that the company's most effective military asset was a well-placed bribe. They had effectively purchased their first major territorial foothold from the inside. 7 years later, at the Battle of Buxar in 1764, the company faced a united front, a coalition of the Nawab of Bengal, the Nawab of Awadh, and the Mughal emperor himself. This time, the British forces thoroughly defeated the combined Indian armies on the field. This flowchart shows the crucial aftermath. The victory forced a legal settlement giving the company direct tax collection rights over the incredibly wealthy regions of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. The company no longer relied on imported British silver. They were now using locally extracted tax revenue to fund the very armies they used to subjugate neighboring territories. Buxar completed the transition. A parasitic merchant group had mutated into an independent sovereign state with its own revenue stream. As their military grew, the company implemented a protection racket, forcing independent kings to pay exorbitant fees to house British troops, slowly driving local rulers into bankruptcy. Then, in 1848, Governor-General Lord Dalhousie introduced their ultimate bureaucratic weapon, the doctrine of lapse. This legal mandate declared that any Indian kingdom whose ruler died without a biological male heir would automatically forfeit its sovereignty to the East India Company. Entire states like Jhansi, Nagpur, and Satara were erased from the map, absorbed by the British without a single shot being fired. The conquest of the subcontinent relied heavily on lawyers, manipulated contracts, and engineered defaults. This 1855 map displays the vast, unified expanse of British India. Decades of political manipulation and legal theft successfully painted over dozens of once independent kingdoms, consolidating them into a single, massive, colonized entity. The suffocating administrative control and systematic economic drain finally pushed the Indian populace to a violent breaking point in 1857. Though the Great Rebellion was eventually suppressed, it laid the foundation for an organized, century-long struggle against the British Crown. It took nearly 200 years of resistance to dismantle the corporate and imperial machinery, culminating in India's hard-fought independence in 1947. The story leaves us with an enduring question. Would a handful of foreign merchants have ever succeeded if India's rulers had abandoned their selfish interests and stood united?